What's going on, guys? UFC 310 takes place next weekend and is headlined by Asakura making his UFC debut for the flyweight title, taking on Alexandre Pantoja. Thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. My name is Josh Beatar, joined alongside my good buddy and co-host Alex Goblin. We're going to be previewing, breaking down, and giving our picks for UFC 310. The last pay-per-view card of the year takes place next weekend in Vegas, and obviously, if you haven't had a chance to look at this card from top to bottom, it is probably one of the best cards we've seen in terms of talent in a very long time. Obviously, you get some good cards, top heavy cards where you got your Jones and Stipe and Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. But for my money, this card is one of the best overall cards from early prelims to top that I've seen in quite some time. We're going to be just having a quick run through some of the fights on the early prelims. We've got Clay Guida, Chase Hooper, Michael Chiesa, Max Griffin, Cody Durden, Joshua Van, Eric Anders, and Chris Weidman. We gave our prediction for Chris Weidman and Eric Anders on the last preview show. So if you go back and have a watch of that one, we give our prediction on that fight. We sort of still think it stands the same thing.
Yeah.
Man, there's some good fun fights on the early prelims and the preliminary card, the prelims on ESPN. Dominic Reyes, Anthony Smith, Themba Gorimbo, and Vicente Luque. Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling, Randy Brown, and Brian Battle. This is a very, very fun card. Obviously, this was going to be Nick Diaz's return, but didn't turn out to be that against Luque. So what are your thoughts, man, on this early prelim card of UFC 310?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it before we jumped on. This is probably one of the better cards of the year. Like, maybe not so much in terms of name value, but, as you were saying, sort of top to bottom quality of fights. This is, even just then, I kind of had another look. I was kind of shocked. This is a really, really good card. But, I mean, sort of the fight, I guess, on the prelims that really sort of gets my attention is Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling because, I think there's big implications for both, depending on who wins. Movsar, this gives him a lot more legitimacy. Beating Aljamain, former champion, who also just beat Calvin Kattar, so coming off a big win. And then, for Aljamain, if he can beat Movsar Evloev, we're not that far away now talking about an Aljamain Sterling title shot. Not that far away, maybe one or two more. I'm really excited for that fight. Ultimately, I'd lean towards Aljo. I just think he's got a nasty style for Movsar to deal with. But, I mean, an incredible card. Dominic Reyes, Anthony Smith, I think is really going to deliver some action. That's another one I'm excited for. But, man, I mean, top to bottom, a really, really stacked card in terms of, like, fan-friendly fights.
And you also got Themba Gorimbo on there. He's getting a bigger name in Vicente Luque. Obviously, he's fought some lower, guys you may not have heard of, but obviously has a pretty cool story. Good mates with The Rock and everything else, and he's helped him out, get him out of the gym and get him his own place. So he's got a cool story. Dude seems like he works hard and wants it. Another fun one I really like is actually Randy Brown, Brian Battle coming off a win not too long ago when he beat Kevin Jousset in France. Very viciously, violently defeated Kevin Jousset, City Kickboxing Zone. So this fight is definitely a fun one.
G'day guys, Josh here for From the Stands. I'm just here to interrupt this video quickly to let you guys know about the sponsor of today's video, TrainAid. TrainAid and their proven line of supplements, including their signature product, TrainAid Hydration, are used by combat sports stars all over the world. Many UFC and boxing world champions are all using TrainAid to help fuel their workouts. TrainAid have been kind enough to give us a big discount code for all of our viewers to use when you guys shop online. If you use the code FTS15 at checkout, you'll receive 15% off all supplements and apparel on the TrainAid website. Head to trainaid.com or click the link in the description of this video.
Randy Brown and Brian Battle. That is one you should be on the hunt for as well.
Brian Covington.
Kicking off kicking off the main card though. I mean, it is a really, really fun fight. A lot of fun fights on the main card as well. And kicking off the main card at featherweight, we have Nate Landwehr taking on Dooho Choi. Very fun fight. I know this is one you're interested in. Give us your thoughts.
Man, I just think it's just going to be an absolute back and forth scrap,
car crash.
I just think we're just going to see literally just two like slabs of meat just running into each other, just like throwing hands. I think this is a great card to put as your opener on the main card. Amazing opener fight. I think, both guys always come to fight. I think we're really going to see a high quality fight. In terms of who I would lean towards, I would lean towards Nate Landwehr just based off the activity, just based off sort of how much more active he has been. And, I do think that time away from the sport really did hurt Doo Ho Choi to a certain extent in terms of his development, but an incredible fight regardless, and it's funny because I feel like Doo Ho Choi in that fight that he had with Cub Swanson, it kind of like made him a fan favorite no matter how long it's been since we last saw him fight. Like, not to an extent of a Cowboy Cerrone, nothing like that, but it's like, man, like that was a once in a lifetime kind of fight, in my opinion, and has made him someone that people want to watch. But I think Nate Landwehr brings that same sort of style, but he's just been more active. I think he's had more experience against the competition. So ultimately, I am siding with Nate, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
I'm leaning with Nate as well, and the reason being, I just think activity plays a big factor in things. Doo Ho Choi, obviously a massive prospect and a very fun fighter, but I think now it's like he only had one fight between 2019 and 2023. He had one cancelled fight in 2021 against Dennis Chavez, and then fought Kyle Nelson to a draw last year, and then had a fight this year against Bill Algeo and won by KO. But I just think Nate's been on a roll. Nate's striking he's durable as all hell. He's gritty. He doesn't like give up. And I just think a guy like Nate Landwehr is pretty hard to beat on any night, especially when there's going to be a crowd in attendance. Like, this dude shows up, and I just think, Korean Superboy, I think, had a lot of potential at one point in time and was like very hype prospect and everything else. I just think where things sort of sit at the moment, I just think Nate's activity and where he is in the sport at the moment will play a lot into this. I'm leaning with Nate as well. I think Nate finishes him. I don't know what round, but I definitely do think Nate does get the job done in this one. Moving on to another fight at featherweight, Kron Gracie taking on Brian Mitchell, that's his alter ego, Brian Mitchell. We got Kron Gracie, Bryce Mitchell at featherweight. Kron Gracie, huh? Still doing the damn thing. What are we thinking? What are we thinking about Kron Gracie?
I think he's going to get smashed, to be honest. Like, look, here's the thing. Amazing jiu-jitsu. Kron has amazing jiu-jitsu, always has been. But I was actually watching a video today that made a really good point, which is that a black belt that won worlds back in 2015 more than likely wouldn't win worlds at purple belt level today, just because jiu-jitsu's evolved so much. And where I'm going with that is this. Kron Gracie, incredible jiu-jitsu. In pure jiu-jitsu, I'd still probably give him the edge in a match over Bryce Mitchell, but it's MMA, and the jiu-jitsu in MMA is so different. And then on top of that, Bryce Mitchell has got some he's not a world-class striker, but he's got interesting things that he does in the striking that can be frustrating. I think he's got a little bit better wrestling. I think he's just a better overall fighter. Kron Gracie really has just had so much inactivity. He has not really developed as a fighter. I can't remember who it was, but he had that comeback fight years after the Cub Swanson one. I can't remember who he fought, but even then it just kind of showed.
Kron's fight.
Yeah, Kron fought someone after Cub.
I think it was Charles Jourdain.
I think it was too, maybe? Yeah. And even that fight, you just saw he hasn't really evolved. He came to MMA so late relative to when people start, and he had that Gracie mindset to a certain extent of just jiu-jitsu, which is great. Like, use your best asset, but I just don't think he has the skills in the other areas to pose a serious problem to like serious fighters in that division, and I'm going to be honest, I'm shocked he's still in the UFC just based off the inactivity, given the fact that, we've seen fighters on win streaks get cut. So I find that quite surprising. But, I really think that he's going to get obliterated by Bryce Mitchell. I really do. I could actually see a submission late. Like, Bryce kind of just beats him up, gets him tired. I could see that happening, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards a decision. But I think Bryce is just going to smash him.
Like, if this was 1998 and this was like UFC 13, maybe I'd probably be leaning towards Kron Gracie, but I just think he's too one-dimensional. And at 36, like entering the sport at such a late age, granted, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world, the Gracie name is obviously very synonymous with jiu-jitsu, but it's only one small little aspect of mixed martial arts, and we can't be so naive to think that just because he's good at jiu-jitsu means he's good at mixed martial arts. It's just not how it works. Bryce Mitchell is a guy who's been in there with the current featherweight champion, Ilia Topuria. Got submitted. Yeah, I get that. But he's actually coming off a win against Dan Ige. So, and that was a pretty impressive fight too. Bryce Mitchell and Dan Ige late last year. If you go check that out, this is Bryce's first fight for this year, but I just think they're on two different levels. I think it's a good fight for Bryce to showcase himself, and he was getting pretty hot there for a while. Bryce Mitchell was, a couple more wins when he was on that little win streak, and he was very much talked about in that title contention sort of spot. So I just think Bryce is a way more evolved mixed martial artist, has many more ways to beat you than Kron Gracie. Kron, correct me if I'm wrong, was he the one who was laying down in his last fight and just basically laying there trying to invite I think it was Charles Jourdain into his guard?
Yeah, I believe he was trying to butt skate.
Charles Jourdain just kind of stepped back and was like, what are we doing? Because there was memes about it and everything else. It's silly. Like I said, Kron's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners of all time, but yeah, we're not just, if it's a jiu-jitsu match, I'm putting my money on Kron, but it's not, and it's mixed martial arts. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, because people, I think they look at, because the UFC obviously, plays up as they should, and they sell the background of Kron Gracie as jiu-jitsu world champion and all these sort of things, but it's like, the sport's not, as you said, it's not 1998 anymore. Even if I took Gordon Ryan today, if I throw him into MMA, yeah, okay, he might submit some super no-name scrubs, like absolutely. But if I throw Gordon Ryan in there with the top 20 of his division, reality is Gordon Ryan 9 times out of 10 is getting messed up. It's just the way that it works. So yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm a bit confused why this fight is even on the card, to be honest.
Well, it'd be nice to see a Bryce Mitchell win nonetheless. We've got some fun fights to finish out the card. Third fight of the night, Cyril Gane, Alexander Volkov. This is a rematch, I believe. They haven't marketed it as such, but it is a rematch from their fight. I think it was right before Cyril Gane took on Francis. So I think it was like end of 21 we saw this fight, and it main evented an Apex card. I'm going to just clarify this. Yeah, it was. It was June 2021, Gane vs Volkov main event at the Apex, and it was boring as shit. It was one of the worst fights I've ever seen, these two. So hopefully this fight is a bit better. Volkov's been looking good lately. I mean, look at what Volkov did to Volkov bashed Tai Tuivasa, and then just beat why am I forgetting his name? Sergey
Pavlovich.
Big Pavlovich. Just beat Pavlovich after the role Pavlovich was on. Granted, he lost to Tom Aspinall, but short notice fight, blah blah blah. Pavlovich was a beast. Like a year ago, we're talking about Pavlovich as the White Francis Ngannou. That's literally what he was. His tagline was the White Francis Ngannou. Like
there was talk about he was going to be the guy to knock out Jones.
Yeah, there was that meme where it's like, white guys, we got our Francis. Like, Volkov is on a roll, and I like that Volkov's on a roll because he's got a decent frame and a decent style for heavyweight. He's just run into some matchups that caused him problems. But yeah, man, let me know your thoughts. But I'm pretty clear on who I think is going to win this fight.
I think it's a really, really good fight. Like, firstly, it's a really, like, I know their first fight was look, their first fight happened.
Cyril Gane has this style that's just like he just will outpoint you. I get.
Yeah, and it's like, but the thing is, right? If this was a Cyril Gane sort of right before he fought Francis, so like in terms of in that mindset how he was training, I would be leaning towards Cyril all day. What concerns me is that, and this trap shows up every time in MMA, Cyril's been talking about all the other things he's doing in France, the movie business, becoming a bit more of just a superstar over there. And it's like, your focus is getting diverted. And even at the level you're at, where you're an up-and-comer, you're a contender, like you can't afford, or very few people can afford to do that. It's funny because it was the same thing as to why I picked Leon to beat Usman the second time. I was like, Usman's talking about movies, he's talking about doing this, doing that. It's like, where's your focus? And so, and as you say, Volkov's been looking really good. I feel like Volkov's really settling in to become just one of those like dangerous names at heavyweight. And I like his style to beat Cyril Gane because I do think, not so much that the blueprint is there with what Jones did to him, like, that Jones, different context, everything. But more that like I think there's been a bit of an exposing on Cyril Gane in terms of he doesn't have that complete skill set. And I think it's the crafty little tricks that Volkov can do, the really tiny little things that Volkov is going to do is going to make the difference in this rematch. I do have Volkov winning. Does he get the finish? I don't know. Cyril Gane's got a very good chin. He can take a shot. You know, he can say a lot, but Cyril Gane can take a shot. And but I will ultimately lean towards Volkov. I'm going to say decision, but 30-27 kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think it's the exact same thing. Volkov's won 4 in a row. Like that's for like what are we talking about? He's won 4 in a row since 2022. He's on a roll, beating guys like Tuivasa, beat Pavlovich. Who else did he beat? I had it up here before. Rosenstruck and then Alexander Romanov, which is some good names, and he's beating him pretty convincingly too. You know, beat the brakes off of Ty in Sydney last year. We were there for that fight, and he beat the brakes off Ty, finished Ty, and then beats a guy like Pavlovich. I just think activity and like you're saying, the whole thing with Cyril and the movie thing, and I just, you know, Cyril hasn't fought for like a year and 3 months. So it's been a while since Cyril's even been in the octagon. Volkov's got activity. He's got names to his resume. Volkov's fought twice in the same amount of span that, you know, Cyril hasn't fought in. So I just think. I also think momentum is a big factor in MMA, and I think Volkov's got this momentum at the moment where it just feels like it's weird because he's been in the UFC for a fair while, but it feels like he's coming to his own now at a later age. And I just think Volkov is I don't know, it's odd. It's like some guys blossom later than others. Some you know, or hit their peak really early, but I guess at heavyweight you can hit your peak a bit later. And I just think Volkov's going through a period where his momentum's high. I think his focus is really dialed in, and I think Cyril's the opposite. I don't know if his focus is all there. He hasn't been as active. You know, he's 2 from his last 4. Lost to Jones, and then lost to Francis, beat Ty, and then beat Spivak. So. I just don't think they're on the same level at the moment. And when they did fight in 2021, I think it was a great matchup to make. And I think it was, you know, Cyril definitely looked better that night. But the role that Volkov's been on should definitely not be discredited. And I think he does get this done as well. I do think it's a 30-27. I think it's a pretty dominant decision victory. If Cyril comes back and beats the brakes off Volkov, well, then you got to start looking at Cyril as a title contender again, because that'd be pretty impressive. At least in the mix somewhere within the next few fights.
For sure.
But nonetheless, a very interesting fight that I'm actually really looking forward to. Now, on the co-main event, this has to be the most hyped co-main event I can remember. Obviously, we had, you know, Oliveira and Chandler, but we saw that once. This is, in my mind, my opinion, the biggest co-main event we've had in a little while. We have 2 undefeated prospects. I can't believe they actually put this fight together.
I'm pretty surprised,
because I thought this fight would happen for a title. So credit to both of these guys for taking this fight. Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Ian Garry, both undefeated, 18-0, 15-0, putting their undefeated streaks on the line in a 5-round co-main event. This is a very, very, very interesting fight. And if there is a fight you shouldn't miss, it is this one, because I think whoever wins this fight is fighting for your welterweight title next. I mean, credit to Shavkat for even taking this fight, because he already had a title fight booked against Bilal, so he technically didn't even need to take this fight. But you know, just such a dog. These guys, credit to both these dudes, really credit, because they could have both sat there and Ian could have taken on, you know, Joaquin Buckley, which was, you know, no Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat could have waited for the title shot. They both could have done their own thing, but, you know, a couple of studs taking on each other. What do you think, and how are you feeling about this matchup at welterweight?
So I think, like, firstly, like, Ian Garry is a good fighter, like regardless of all the cuck stuff, which is absolutely hilarious, but like, he is a good fighter. He is. But when I look at this fight, I look at it like, okay, when I like kind of look at a fight, I like to think who's got more ways to win. Not so much like who's got the big power, who's got this big X factor, who has more ways to win. Now, from what we've seen so far, that would appear to be Shavkat, just in terms of variability, in terms of how you're going to get finishes, higher finishing percentage, things like that. And I could be wrong, but I believe Shavkat has finished every fight in the UFC that he's had. I believe he's got a 100% finish rate.
I think he's, I don't even think in the UFC, I think of all of his fights.
Yeah, which is insane. Like absolutely
18
insane.
and 0, 18 finishes.
That's ridiculous. That is absolutely insane. But you know, I also look at it like Shavkat is weird in the sense of his ability to get submissions and get finishes from strange positions, and even just how he moves is just a little bit different. You know, you go back, you watch that Jeff Neal fight, it was quite competitive until, you know, towards the later sort of section of the fight. And then Shavkat just kind of gets a finish from a really strange position that it wasn't like clearly set up. So I just think Shavkat's sort of ability to finish the fight from more areas, as well as sort of how he's not a standard approach sort of fighter. He doesn't move the same way, stand the same way. I think that's going to give him an advantage. Now, I do think it's going to be a hard fight. I do think that, especially the first round, I think that's going to be a real feeling out process. Both of them kind of like trying to extend on their jabs, gauge the distance and the range. I do think it's going to be a hard fight. I don't think it's a case of Shavkat's just going to walk in there, spinning heel kick Ian Garry in 10 seconds and knock him out. I just don't think that's going to happen. I am ultimately leaning towards Shavkat based off ability to finish the fight, where he can finish the fight, as well as that dude has got grit. Like, you watch that Jeff Neal fight. Jeff Neal has up and down performances, admittedly, but the dude hits hard, and that was a scrap. And, you know, I just don't know if Ian Garry has the sort of developed game everywhere to beat Shavkat. So I am ultimately leaning towards Shavkat. I do think it's going to be a hard fight, but I'd be very curious to hear what you think about this one.
No, I'm leaning the same. I think Ian Garry has definitely got championship potential. I think he's a great fighter. He's undefeated for a reason. And to give him credit, which he doesn't get a lot of, he has beaten good guys. When he first got to the UFC and he was getting these quick wins and everything else, like, it was like, oh, he hasn't been tested yet. Now he's been tested. He's been in there with some tough guys and beaten all of them, and pretty convincingly too. I just think where these two guys are at in their career, for Ian to have a better chance, I feel like it should have been a year or two from now.
Yes.
I just feel like right now, Ian and Joaquin Buckley was a better fight for Ian.
Now, I agree.
Now, you're Ian Garry. Of course, you're going to fight Shavkat. You win this fight, you get a title shot, and you beat Shavkat, who's undefeated. So I get the point from Ian Garry. I full respect to him for taking this fight. This is what they do. Fighters fight, and that's what he does. So full credit to him. He's always going to sign the contract, sign the dotted line to face whoever they put in front of him. Respect the hell out of that. My personal opinion, though, I really think this is too soon. I think this is too soon for Ian. I think if you're given Shavkat, had he waiting for Bilal and Ian took on Joaquin Buckley, I think it would have been a better. I think Joaquin would. I feel like Ian would have been in a better position to take 1, 2, 3 more fights even, and then face Shavkat. I feel like we would have seen a more developed, an older, mature. He's 27. He's not that old, really, in fighting years, especially at welterweight. That's pretty young. Yeah. To nearly be at title contention. So, guys like Usman didn't become champion until they were 30, 31, 32. Woodley was like champion at 35 or something. Yeah. Yeah. Look at Bilal. Bilal's 36. So, welterweight, it really is an older man's, not older man's game, but it has been of late for the champions in that division. Leon, I think, became champion at 30. Shavkat's 30. And I'm not saying age means you're going to become a champion. I just think where Shavkat's at right now, he is the problem at welterweight. And I don't know if Ian can solve it. I don't think, and I'll preface it with this, I think this is a fight we see again down the line.
I agree.
I think for a title, whoever wins the fight, I think we see this as a title fight, whether Ian wins and then Ian gets the next title shot. I think Ian's first title defense will be against a guy like Shavkat. Same thing with Shavkat. If this is a close fight, I definitely think it is one we'll see again, which I think it will be. I agree with you. I think it'll be a real chess match. I think that first round is going to be probably not a lot of action, but a lot of feeling out, reading, getting reads, those sort of things. And then I think the second and third round will play out a bit more. But it's a 5-round co-main event. I think we're going to get to see what both men are made of. We're going to get to see what Ian Garry is made of. Can he? If he can beat a guy like Shavkat, then you have to give him the title shot. That is incredible, because Shavkat has looked like what we thought Hamzat was going to be. But I mean, I can't even say that now, because Hamzat just put Robert Whittaker to sleep in 2 minutes and broke his jaw, like, viciously. So Shavkat, I still think. Shavkat has a real potential to be a 2-weight world champion. I think he can be a champion at welterweight, and I think if he moves up, he can definitely be a champion at middleweight. I would love to see Hamzat Shavkat one day. I think everyone wants to see that fight. But on this fight, I agree with you. I think where they are at, I'm not saying Ian can't win. I think he has ways to win, but I agree with you. I think Shavkat has more ways to win. He's unorthodox. He's an absolute dog and just doesn't feel pain. Like dude just keeps walking forward. And I just think we've seen little bits of weaknesses from Ian Garry. He does get clipped. He does get touched. And I just think against a guy like Shavkat, you have to be perfect. And unless we see a perfect version of him, then I think it's Shavkat's all day long.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd add on to that is like, what did Ian Garry go to in the MVP fight as soon as he realized he was not the faster fighter? And that's not, now look, smart choice, 100%, tactically very intelligent. But what did Shavkat do when he maybe was losing some of those early exchanges against Jeff Neal? He was like, all right, cool, I'm going to throw down as well. Like, let's go. And I just think it's that. I think it's that sort of thing in your head that's going to really push this fight over. But shall we move into the main event?
Yeah, big time main event. I think Kai might be the first person to ever get a title shot in a UFC debut, unless I'm forgetting one. Tim Elliott. Oh yeah, of course.
I don't know if that. I think he'd already been in the UFC and then he left. I could be wrong, but
nonetheless,
from what I remember,
it is a weird one. I think it just shows where you're at flyweight. I mean, you're really one win away in another organization from fighting for a title in the UFC. So, Alexandre Pantoja defending his belt, his flyweight title, first flyweight title fight since he defeated Steven Erceg back at UFC 301, I believe, in Brazil, taking on Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura from Ryzen. I sort of have my certain feelings on this fight. I feel like you do too. So I'll let you kick things off and let us know what you think about this main event.
It's interesting in the sense of like it has a bit of like a what if factor. Yeah,
literally.
Like even honestly, I had not seen this guy fight until he got announced for the title, and then I kind of went back through, watched all of his fights, sort of thing. But there's a bit of a what if factor there. You know, it's interesting to a certain degree, like a storyline of, you know, this guy's coming into the UFC, never fought here. What if he beats the champion? But we've seen it time and time again that a lot of times when fighters come over to the UFC for their first fight, it's just different. The feeling is different, the nerves, the energy. And even Chandler kind of talked about this after his UFC debut. Like, it's a different thing. Now, I think you couple that with the fact that Pantoja he's good in a sense of like, there's nothing he does that is like, oh my God, this is world-class level. Like, he could go with any jiu-jitsu guy on earth right now and he'd sub him. He could wrestle with the best wrestlers, he'd beat him. He could strike with the best kickboxers and he'd beat them. But he kind of does everything well. And then there's little things that he does at that veteran level, like just tiny little sort of movements or adjustments that really sort of make him very tricky to fight. You know, he really earned my respect when he fought Marino. I thought Marino was going to walk through him. I really did. I was like, Marino's like on his level now. So I was really, really surprised at that. And then even the Steven Erceg fight, like, you know, even just how he did in that fight, Pantoja really sort of surprised me. So I do ultimately think Pantoja is going to win this fight based off just sort of the experience in the UFC, sort of that veteran experience as well, the 5-round experience as well. You know, I'm not one of those people that's like, there's no good fighters outside of the UFC. Like, no, not true. There's dudes in PFL right now that would beat some of your top 10, you know, UFC fighters. Just, that's a fact. But I just, you know, I think that this is a little early in terms of to be pulling the trigger on this title shot. And I think you're at risk of potentially really setting back, you know, a fighter that could be a huge international star for you in that market. Ultimately, I'm going to lean towards Pantoja. I can actually see him getting a submission victory, probably in the third or the fourth, kind of a little bit later, drag it out, drag him into deep waters. I could see him getting a submission there, which is ultimately what I'm going to go to, but very curious to hear about what you think about this fight.
I think it'd be good if Kai wins for the Japanese market, because it looks like the UFC would probably go back to Japan, a place they haven't been for quite some time, a place notoriously, you know, big MMA country. I just think experience and the level of competition plays a lot into things, and I just think Pantoja is like it really levels above. I really think that. Like, I mean, if we look at Kai's record, had his last win against Juan Archuleta, one obviously great fighter from Bellator. You know, never going to be a UFC caliber champion, in my opinion. But the really only guys he's faced that we're going to know of, Kyoji Horiguchi, you know, he's 1-1 against Kyoji Horiguchi and 1-1 against Manel Kape.
And Horiguchi is past his prime.
Yeah, and Manel is 1-1 with Manel Kape, but the rest of them, you wouldn't be able to find tape on. So it's hard. You know, I haven't watched a lot of Kai Asakura, but I just think Pantoja is like a guy that he'll always find a way to win. He never gives up. And especially in that Moreno fight, when I thought Moreno, I was like you, I thought Moreno was going to win. And you got to tip your hat off to Alexandre Pantoja. Whether you think he's a boring champion, whether you maybe don't want him in there, maybe you wanted Usyk to win. I thought Usyk was doing really well, and I would have liked to see Usyk win. But you've got to tip your hat to a guy like Alexandre Pantoja because he finds a way to win. He has that like never give up attitude. And like we're saying about Shavkat, I just think he has more ways to win. I think he's a more complete. I think he really is the best flyweight fighter in the world. I think you put him in there against a Davison Figueiredo. I think he beats him every time. If Davison ever came back, you know, obviously Davison was a flyweight champion. I think he wins every time. I just think he's such a well-rounded mixed martial artist at such a high level that has beaten the caliber of guys he's beaten over the course of these years. I just think where they're at in terms of their careers, it's just chalk and cheese. You know what I mean? I think, don't get me wrong, Kai could come out there and look really good. But what I really think is going to happen is Pantoja's just going to show that the thing that DC always says, there's levels. I think he's going to show that there is levels to this, and I think Pantoja will walk through him fairly comfortably. Doesn't mean Kai can't be a good fighter in the top 10. Who knows? Maybe puts on a good showing and gets a Moreno or an Albazi or a Kai Kara France next, or one of those guys. But like I think you put Kai Asakura in there with Kai Kara France, and I think Kara France is taking him out. Yeah. So you put the champion there with him. I really think that Pantoja's going to put one through Kai Asakura next weekend rather. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
The only thing I'll say is this is actually the first card where we've agreed on how we think every single fight is going to go. So I find that quite interesting. But no, I mean, again, this is an incredible fight card. Like honestly, like if you are a fan of fighting, like you like to tune in, most of the time, watch this card because it's usually the cards as well that don't have massive names everywhere that sort of deliver these huge fights. So I'm really, really excited for this card.
Yeah, no, me too. It's like little golden nuggets everywhere. There's every fight there's going to be a good one, I think, and a name that you'll recognize. Even if you're a casual fan, I think you'll still recognize the names that you see on the early prelims to the ESPN Plus prelims, all the way to the main card. So guys, thank you for checking this video. I really appreciate it. Let us know who you're picking and for next weekend, UFC 310. Let us know your picks below. We'd love to see them. We'll pin them at the top of this video. But until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys in the next video.
See you guys later.